Inside Foos presents FoosTalk Live.
Oh, I think we're all going to get along. It's just going to be like, any other family get-together where you have
that could
people
be,
with varying different opinions. And,
that could be bad.
and nobody wants to sit next to that uncle or that Mark. I don't like being sat next to Mark at the dinner table, but these things happen. So, game on.
I didn't even listen to what you guys were saying. All I know is that this list is a dumpster fire of disagreement.
I got what I wanted for Christmas, and that Mark stopped singing.
It's FoosTalk Live.
You talking to me?
Compelling and lively banter.
Are you going to talk to us?
Talking foosball.
Foosball was how I measured my value as a man. You took that away.
Players and fans, promoters and pros. Unedited and raw.
Talk.
Living in the moment.
We have a lot of important things to talk about.
All while practicing social distancing.
Cool. We'll talk. No big whoop.
Let's get this thing started. FoosTalk Live. Coming to you live from the studios of Inside Foos, it's the 91st episode of FoosTalk Live, brought to you by InsideFoos.com, offering monthly subscriptions with access to some of the most exciting matches ever recorded, plus live tournaments, pre- and post-show analysis, interviews, and original programming. Sign up now at InsideFoos.com. Also brought to you by ProtectoFlex, the world's premier foosball safety accessory. Go to protecto-flex.com. Brought to you by Rodlock. Practice more, reach less. The best practice tool in foosball. Visit rod-lock.com. Brought to you by 518 Prints, one of the best printers of promotional items and foosball apparel. Visit 518prints.com. Also brought to you by by Foosballers, the movie. This Joe Hesslinger foosball documentary is now available as a worldwide download at foosballersthemovie.com. Also brought to you by the USTSO, helping to usher in a new era of competitive foosball. Become a member at usafoosball.com. And brought to you by Foosball Clubs USA, promoting foosball through school systems all over the United States. Make a donation today at foosballclubsusa.com. Well, Happy New Year, and welcome to our first episode of 2022, and also considered our 91st episode of all time. I'm Tom Robinson, looking forward to chatting about foosball this evening. Of course, conversation about foosball is always so much better when you have someone to share it with, such as the greatest play-by-play announcer in the sport of foosball, Jim Stevens. Hello, Jim.
Hello, Tom Robinson. Happy New Year, everyone out there in foosball land. And you said it. Conversation is really what it's about. It's about topics, and we have a tremendous topic that we're culminating here tonight. The top 50 greatest foosball players in the history of the American Tour, down to the final 10. I'm dressed to the nines in a tuxedo. I have laid out the red carpet here in the Inside Foos studios.
I dig it,
and I'm ready for tonight's exciting show, Tom.
Yeah, this is black tie event, man. This is all the enchiladas right here in one plate. This is great. Pardon my food euphemism, but that's the way we roll here, and we're looking forward to this. I think last week's episode, there might have been some disagreements with some of the order of the list, which we'll talk about, but nonetheless, fantastic, and I'm looking forward to tonight.
And disagreements, what it's all about. I mean, obviously different opinions. It has been such a challenge, and we'll talk more about this when Mark and Adam join us here in a minute, but it has been such a challenge to be able to take different eras, different styles, different levels of competition, all of these various factors that we had to somehow put together, meld together, use a percentage of this, a percentage of that.
Mm-hmm.
We had to look at players' resume. We had to look at strength of an era, the longevity of their career, what their peers thought of them. Were they the best player in the world at any time in their careers? And then the eye test also, of just watching a player.
Sure.
And I think when it comes down to tonight, the top 10, this is all of these players, I think, on the top 10 tonight, at one point in their career or another, were considered the best player in the world. And that's kind of what you would expect from a top 10, wouldn't you?
Okay. Now, it's the criteria obviously has to be extraordinary because of the depth, going all the way back into the 70s, 80s, 90s, and of course the 2000s. What an extraordinary task. I think I take my hat off to all you guys for taking put your reputation on the line here to come up with this list. And we should probably mention David Gummison, because he was also a contributor of this list.
Yep, for sure.
But this ought to be very interesting. And of course, what would the year 2022 be with our own agent provocateur, our dumpster fire master, and of course, former teen idol and karaoke king, Mark Torres. Mark, hello, Mark.
The man who
Tom,
started that fire in the dumpster. Yeah.
Tom, you said enchilada.
Thank
which
you.
Is a
I love that.
Enchilada.
I
a
was gonna call
flippin'
him on it.
reminder that you're the whitest human being I've ever personally known. They're English people with the worst accent of all time don't say enchilada. Okay, let's start there.
Okay. All
Um,
right, well,
on-
let me defend myself and say that back in high school, I failed Spanish 1 twice. So
not only that, you've never actually met a Mexican. I'm dressed to the nines to like a Zoom call. I'm wearing a shirt and no pants. This is how I do it at work. This is how I do it here. So let's invite Adam in because he has choice words about enchilada as well.
I have a
No,
special.
I was going to ask.
Special
ask
intro
what
for you, Adam. Of course, we found out recently you are a legendary butt smoker, which of course we need to be completely.
We put it on the air.
One too. Is this on?
Yeah. I love how your mom called you.
He does
Called you
mean,
and asked
he
if
means
you're a
pork,
meat
pork
smoker.
butts. For sure.
It's pork butt. Yeah, we're talking about we're talking about barbecue.
Yes.
Adrian Zamora.
For sure.
Yes, you and Adrian both legendary.
Well, I don't know in my own head, but
Butt smoker.
Let's see. No, we covered the butt smoker. We got the enchilada. Okay, so back to the list. So you know what we do for those of you out there in the fanverse land before the show is we usually have a pre-game show and just tell each other our favorite knock jokes and get really serious about things. But tonight's pre-game show felt different to me. Like
Different.
It felt a little bit more there was a bit more gravity. I mean, it's not like we're unveiling a cure for a major disease, but you could feel it. Like this is an important list. It's important to get out there, and it's even more important to create the conversation that it is very clearly doing.
Yeah.
And it's something that we can always revisit in different ways, but it's out there. It's been thought about incredibly at a very deep level, looking at a bunch of different angles. So I'm happy with it. I'm really happy that we're doing this, and I'm really excited for this top 10 tonight.
Yeah, there's
the final 10.
There was finally consensus, and I know actually last week's list was more difficult because you guys kept going back and forth, and right up to the last second as to who was going to go where. And
you know why, Tom? So a couple things. The reason why that is because we only have 10 names left to play with.
Okay,
there's still plenty of argument that some of the people from 11 through 20 shouldn't have been in the top 10. There's still plenty of disagreement and engagement. So that's the one thing. I think the other thing that's very revealing about this is how there are bias. There's inherent bias or error bias for that matter, where people leaned toward their era. And so, Dave leaned heavily toward the 70s. I think we had this conversation.
Yep.
Jim's kind of spread out a little bit, but a little bit toward the modern era. And I leaned toward the 90s, and we have to account for all of that. And it would be true for anyone participating in this list, which is why I think the combined historical and factual and actual a priori knowledge of the experience is critical. Dave was there, Jim was there for part of it, Adam was there for the early 2000s. I was there for the 90s, and cumulatively, it takes that kind of interest and information. Otherwise, if you give someone the opportunity to do a top 50 list and they only started playing in 2010, it's going to be a really wonky list. It's going to be a broken list, frankly. Anyway, that's my rant.
If you could just do me a favor and spell a priori.
That's brilliant, Mark. First time I've heard that word on the show for sure. Also a neat thing tonight. After the list is over, we're gonna have a round table. We're gonna talk about different things, who we thought should be on or shouldn't be on, or maybe players who were higher or lower than we felt they should have been. And a little bit about the process, and I'm sure we'll debate a little bit, and also invite, I think, comments from fans out there as well. So that should be interesting. One final thought for me before we have a drink. It's been an amazing process for me. I basically have gone in and put together these bios for these 50 players and really learned some things and remembered some things and really gained great appreciation for the different eras and the greatness of all of these players. But it's really been really therapeutic to some degree for me as well to sort of really experience the full history of what is an amazing sport.
Yes.
With a history that was well documented in Foosballers, and one that, when I tell people that I meet and I say foosball, it has this amazing history, and it truly does. And so the process itself has just been really wonderful for me. And now the culmination tonight. And I don't know that we nailed it, but we came pretty damn close to nailing this list, guys. We all of us, I think, did a great job in really putting thought and experience and our knowledge of the game into it. And I'm pretty proud of the whole process.
As you should be. No, it's truly a monumental, and I think this is something that, as time goes on, it may change, but who knows? As far as new players coming in and the changes that could take place in the next 5 years, let's hope there's plenty of material.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of material,
yes,
I'm thirsty.
Yeah, me too.
What Jim and I like to do right about this time is to reveal our favorite IPA.
It's the first IPA of 2022, Jim. What are you going to do?
Well, Tom, it's a special night.
Yes.
And in honor of that special night, I actually have two IPAs set up in front of me here. My two favorite IPAs. I've got the list all the way down to number 2 and number 1. For me, coming in at number 2, Pliny the Elder, and I've had it a few times on the show. It's hard to get. When you do find it, grab it, drink it. It's brewed with Amarillo, Centennial, CTZ, and Simcoe hops. It's well balanced with malt hops and alcohol, of course.
Ooh.
It really, truly one of the best beers in the world. Let me have a quick sip of this one. Always great. And my favorite beer, number 1 beer for me over the last couple of years has been out of the Melvin Brewery up in Wyoming, Alpine, Wyoming. It's the Melvin 2x4 double IPA at 9.9% alcohol.
Yeah.
Definitely a 2x4 to the head after a couple of these. Delicious beer. Wonderful beer. So I've got 2 great ones tonight in honor of a great evening.
And it's not dangerous to mix, I take it.
No, not with these.
Okay.
2 outstanding double IPAs.
Okay. Adam, what have you?
What I have is maybe have set myself up for failure, but I saw this can and I just had to have it. I saw it in the window when I had to have it. It's a Duckfoot Brewing Company out of California.
Ooh.
It's a West Coast style IPA. It's not a hazy, and they're called their coconut IPA.
Oh,
but
nice.
what attracted me to it was
Coconut.
it has this old timey pugilist wearing a straw skirt, and it has a robot mask on. So of course this is going to be good. But let's see here. Yeah, no, it's
better.
It's not bad. I mean,
than Capri
it's better
Sun?
than the Capri Sun.
Yeah.
No, it's
Good.
here's the deal. It's it's got a light citrusy flavor. The hops are there off the nose, and it's thin. It's kind of thin, but it's not bad.
Okay, nice.
It's not bad. I don't like West Coast style IPAs, but this isn't that bad. So all right,
very good.
Praise be to the grass skirt.
Praise be. Well, I'm sticking to the East Coast, guys. I mean, this is where India Pale Ale seems to have its fortress on the East Coast. So I'm going with something called Green
That's
Tops.
India Pale Ale, by the way.
India, yes, India. Oh, please.
Hey-o.
Green Tops is where we're going tonight. Green Tops IPA. It's a double IPA. Comes from North Haven, Connecticut, and it's a place called Short Throw Brewing. And this is one of their finer examples of a double IPA. So let's sample and take a sip. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. And once again, the East Coast has won the day. This is great. Yeah, Green Tops.
Did you say Green Top?
Green
Top.
Tops.
Is that what you said?
Green Tops.
Yeah,
TOPS.
Green Top was actually the very first table I ever played on, the Green Top TS table.
Oh,
back
there
in
you
the
go.
70s. So
What I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Love it. Very cool.
It was before the ball was round. It was square.
We had what balls? We played with rocks. What do you mean?
By the way, I got to say, compliments to the chef, but also compliments to the can designer. On the side in big letters, it says, "Yo, recycle." So
Yeah.
I'll recycle
Okay.
properly.
Tree hugger.
Mark, what do you have?
Stop.
You're
Yeah,
Mark,
Mark.
you're sitting there in your tuxedo with no pants on, and by
Right.
no pants we mean no pants. And what are you drinking?
I got a lime LaCroix, baby, and
Lime?
LaCroix. Oh yeah, so like this, that means they waved the lime over it because there's really I don't know how there's no
Right,
flavor in these things.
Yes.
Yes. Lime LaCroix, baby. I'm going down. Let's go. Cheers. Who are we cheersing, Tom?
Well, okay.
We have
the
lime.
honor group of the week.
We have coconut.
Yeah, you know who the
Yeah.
honor group of the
Ooh,
week
put
is.
the lime in the coconut.
That's one of my
Lime in the
favorite
coconut.
Harry Nilsson songs, "Lime into Coconut." Anyway, we are toasting to our listeners. They are the honor group of the week. Yeah, they are the people that put us over the top. As of New Year's Eve, we hit 50,000 downloads total for the show for Foosball Radio, FoosTalk Live, and Shooting the Shot combined. But 50,000 listeners downloaded our podcast and our product. And man, here's to you, our listeners. Thank you so much. Cheers and Happy New Year.
Shout out to Reese Roberts
to you guys.
and Dave Z and Mike Green and all the other diehards that you're psychotic and we love you. Cheers.
Yeah.
Where would we be without you?
Those three in particular.
Absolutely. No, it's one of these days we'll have to do this show from Reese Roberts' neighborhood in London.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Oh yes,
Mm-hmm.
that man bites
From his loo.
bear.
We could do it from his loo. Yeah,
His
we
loo.
get good acoustics in there. Yeah.
You know, we think we know people so well, but he might have like human skin dresses in his closet. So why don't we get to know him a little bit first? Just kidding. Just kidding.
You are brutal, man.
Reese is laughing at that. I promise you.
Yes, and Mark is only drinking a LaCroix. I mean, can you imagine? Wow.
He doesn't need to drink.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't.
You know what? I am high on sugar because whatever happens between Christmas and New Year is just anarchy of dietary just mistakes. Only way to describe it. I just grab a handful of Oreo cookies for a snack, like 9 of them, just shove them down my throat.
I get in my pantry and just close the door and just eat. It's just hands in the Oreos, hands in the just whatever. There's some almonds that are chocolate covered. I don't even like that, and I'm just eating them. I don't care.
Yeah.
And they found him the next morning.
I actually stayed up on New Year's Eve. I stayed up on New Year's Eve just waiting for Dick Clark to come out. And he never did. That's like 6-7 straight years now.
Did you forget to take your ginkgo? You got to take your ginkgo.
Premature onset dementia is what they call that. Totally cool.
That's not nice.
Oh, this is going the wrong way really fast. Incidentally,
let's move on.
We have activities coming up very soon. Next weekend in Buffalo, New York, there's a tournament with the 716. There are several people from my neighborhood are heading that way. That's one of several things coming up. Guys, what other tournaments do we have happening?
Let's talk about it. So Inside Foos provides something called stream capture, and it's when we do remote capture of the tournament, and we do remote commentary, and our commentators get on board. And we got a couple things coming up. So you said the first one, that's next Saturday, January 8th. Mm-hmm. That's the Buffalo 5th anniversary foosball tournament. We're excited to do that one. And then we have South Dakota State. That's February 18th through the 20th.
Nice.
Actually, sorry, let me rewind. We got the tour kickoff. January 27th through the 30th. That's Mary Moore's tournament.
Oh, that's right.
In Kentucky. That's actually first. That's after. So that's our second one after the Buffalo tournament. So we're gonna do that remote stream capture, and then we have South Dakota State on February 18th through the 20th on the same weekend. We're gonna be on site for the Thunderdome Limited Championship in Pompano Beach, Florida. That's February 18th through the 20th, and then the last one here is Florida State. We are going to be streaming that tournament April 28th through May 2nd. And so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. We got 5 events coming up here in the next month and a half.
Going to be busy.
And that number could actually increase with Moneyball taking place in March, and of course April also. Perhaps we will see. In fact, we'll see the Hall of Fame Classic in April as well. So a lot of great stuff coming up in the first third of the year here in 2022.
I can easily say we won't be bored. Let's put it that way. As long as COVID doesn't come back, in some way, shape, or form, I think we're going to have some fun. No question.
I don't know if you know or not, but COVID's gone. There's no more COVID.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Thanks.
No, we'll see how it goes.
What's COVID?
Mark knows all.
Is that
by the way.
Is it a foosball table?
Take control of the show, Tom.
It's a new table.
All right. The
Dutch.
There is, to prepare ourselves for tonight's top 10 list, I think that the flashback is really telling. With great moments in foosball history, this is a FoosTalk Live Flashback.
Tom Ure will put it back into play on his 5-0. It is World Championship point for Cullen Young and Lafredo, looking for their 12th World title. Yours. Pass attempt doesn't execute it. Here's Lafredo in possession of the ball. Pass along that near wall to the 5-rod of Collignon. A beautiful play. Rush down pass blocked by Yor. And along the wall this time goes Collignon and a checks to win it. For the championship, Frederick Colinyon drills it home. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, it's Collignon and Lafredo.
Listen in next time for another great moment in foosball history. It's FoosTalk Live.
Well, that certainly is telling when it comes to our top 10 tonight, and that was quite an event there. Todd and
Yeah.
Fred.
Yeah, 2012, a few things had started to occur as we moved into this decade. Prize money started to go down a little bit at the World Championships. Some participation at the event in Dallas started to diminish a little bit. At the time in 2012, we said, oh, there's Fred and Todd doing it again. Little did we realize that was literally that ball you just heard was the very last ball that Collignon and Lafredo played together.
Wow.
Really?
That was it. That was it for them. And Collignon that weekend finished off his American career because he hasn't been back since that 2012 Tornado World Championships.
Huh.
But he finished it off with a triple. He won the doubles, he won singles, and he won mixed doubles that weekend in Dallas. And it's the last time that Collignon has made the trip across the pond to compete here in America, and which really makes that a very, very special flashback and a very special event that weekend.
That's officially 10 years ago. It's a full decade since Freddie.
It will be, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that something?
2022, 10 years ago. Wow. Okay.
Mm.
Well, guys, I think that this is probably one of those situations where we need not kibitz around or rap about much of anything else except for getting down to the brass tacks here. The final 10 of the top 50 best players in American Tour history. What do you think?
Yeah, no, for sure. Tonight, I'm going to go ahead and count down from 50. In fact, I'm going to count down from 56
Okay.
to 11, right
All
before we go into the top 10. There are 6 players who received votes, but did not make it into the top 50. At number 56, Terry Rue. Number 53, we had a 3-way tie between Bob Gibson, Ken Rivera, and Karen Gilliland. At number 51, and literally just 3 points in the voting out of number 50, the number 50 spot, Trevor Park and Mark Crowell.
Wow.
Number 50, Larry Chesbrough tied with Eddie Gardman at number 50. Eddie, the great goalie out of Texas. Don Swan at 49. Ronnie Nevoy, number 48. Number 47, Liz Hill Moore. Steve Viney comes in at 46. Kerry Walliger at number 45. Gary File, the great legendary player out of Texas at 44. Our good friend Don Chalafu at 43. Gus Trevino should be a Hall of Famer. Number 42. Number 41, the great Oklahoma player Kevin Keeter. Bob Maloney, a friend of the program, comes in at number 40. Brandon Moreland, still going strong at number 39. The great Tina Wyatt, Tina Roton at number 38. 37, Billy Sumption, one of the true pioneers of the game. The great goalie Gil Jackson comes in at number 36. 35, Kenny Alwell, our great friend. John Smith, the sensational Texas player at 34. Tim Zeke Burns, number 33. Another guy that should be in the Hall of Fame and hopefully will be soon at number 32. And Scotty Weidman. 31, the great Steve Simon. The top 30 starts off with Tom Yor at 30. Moya Thielens at 29. Mike Bells at number 28. Greg G. Perry, the great player out of Southern California, at 27. Northern California is Adrian Zamora at 26. Bobby Diaz gets in there at number 25 because of his goalie skills. At number 24, Brent Bednar. 23, Lewis Cartwright, another great friend of the show. AC McMillan, the classy gentleman out of Houston, at 22. Johnny Lott at 21. Rick Martin at 20. Tony Bacon at 19. Coming in at 18, Steve Murray, our great friend, the great foosball man. Number 17, the legendary Jim Wiswell. Number 16, Dave Gummison, who participated in the compilation of this list. Number 15, the outstanding lady player out of Texas, Lori Schramms. Robert Mares at number 14. Number 13 was Mike Bowers. Johnny Horton at number 12. At number 11, Tommy Atkinson, as we now will look to unveil the 10 greatest players in the history of American foosball playing tour.
Gentlemen, are we ready?
Yep.
Let's do it.
Throughout the history of professional American foosball competition, the top players have waged war. Many have tried, and many have failed. Inside Foos and Foosball Radio unite to bring you the names of those who stand above the rest. The greatest players in American Pro Tour foosball. From the 70s, 80s, 90s to present day, we are proud to present the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Players in American Pro Tour History. This list has been compiled by experts, hermetically sealed in a mayonnaise jar, locked in the vault of the firm Stevens, Torres, and Gilson, and hand-delivered under armed guard to the studios of FoosTalk Live. Tonight, we present to you the players ranked from 10 through number 1. We continue with the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Players in American Tour History. Coming in at number 10, Billy Pappas.
Yeah, Billy Pappas. When putting this list together, we talked about some of the things to consider, whether it was the resume, whether they're the best player at any time in their careers, the eye test, the strength of their era, the longevity, what their peers thought of them. Well, when it comes to Billy Pappas, if we're just using the eye test, this guy would be coming in at number 1 or number 2. Just incredible athleticism on the table. So strong, you could hear a Billy Pappas shot from across the room. You knew it was him, and he did it in such a seemingly effortless style. Billy that broke through, I guess we could say, with a rookie singles win at the 1995 U.S. Open in Cleveland, Ohio, at the age of 9 years old. And this was about 150 players in the field, and he was able to beat all of them. Most of them were 2 or 3 times his age, and we said, boy, look at this kid. He's really something. And then, towards the late 90s, Billy didn't participate quite as much. And then beginning in the early 2000s, we saw him have this great run at the 2001 Super Doubles event when he was, I guess, 16 in 2001, when he played with Mike Yore as they made it to the finals, losing to Terry Moore and Bob Diaz. And then in 2004, now at, I guess, 19 years old, he won the Texas State title with Tony Spreaderman after beating Brandon Moreland and Michael Archer in the final after they had won the previous 2 years. That was his first big open win. Finished second to Tony Spreaderman at the 04 Nationals up in Minneapolis in a match that was just extraordinary. And I remember that match because this was really the first time I saw Billy Pappas shoot the ball from goalie like that, if you know what I mean. And we were all sort of on the edges of our seat every time he got it. A great singles final against Tony. He was a 5-time world champion. And really the reason he is on this list, the reason he is in the top 10 is because of this incredible run he had in open singles from 2005 through 2011. And I'll detail it for you. In 2005, Billy won open singles and beating Frederick Colinyon in the final. If you remember, they also had a championship singles event that weekend that Fred won, but Billy beat Fred in the final of open singles. Came back in 2006 to win in Las Vegas to win the open singles championship, beating Robert Mares. In 2007, finished second at the Tornado Worlds to Frederick Collignon. In 2008, he dropped all the way to 5th, losing to Todd Lafredo 8-6 in the 5th game as he took 5th, but came back in 2009 to win again and beat Frederick Colinyon again 2 times in this streak where he won 4 world championships in 6 years in 7 events. He beat Fred in the final. In 2010, finished second, lost to Ryan Moore. That was Ryan's first big breakthrough. And then in 2011, came back again to beat Fred again, actually, in the final. And win a 4th world championship in 7 years, which was just a remarkable run. He also won a mixed doubles world championship with Karen Lamano in 2013. He tripled at the 2005 Nationals without losing a single match, including an open doubles win with Trevor Park, which was Trevor's first win ever. Also won the 2007 Hall of Fame Classic with Trevor Park, beating, again, Cullen Young and Lafredo in the final. If this was a multi-table international list, I would probably have Billy Pappas at number 2 in history behind Frederick Colinyon. That's how great of a player this guy is. He never won an open doubles world championship on Tornado, but was close, finishing second 2 different times in 2005. And then again with Fernando de Rosa in 2009. with Trevor Park in 2005. He's also been an incredible performer for the national team. He's undefeated in elimination play for Team USA. In other words, when it matters the most, when Billy's playing for his team, for his country, he has never lost. And many of you may remember his return to the tour a couple of years ago in 2019 in Colorado when he finished second in all 3 open events. Maybe the most talented player the sport has ever seen. No doubt a first ballot Hall of Famer when he becomes eligible, which I believe is at the age of 40. Coming in at number 10, the great Billy Pappas.
I know Billy Pappas very, very well. If this was about physical skill and foosball ability, he'd, in my opinion, be number 1 on my list. I think he'd be number 1 on Todd's list. I think he'd be number 1 on Fred's list. But it's not that. Unfortunately, that's why he's not higher on the list. And I want to speak for a second about this idea of the perfect apex predator. And so every once in a while, it's like a generational thing. Someone with the most physical ability works the hardest, has the most dedication, the most competitive spirit, and just chases greatness. And the best example of that is basketball, is Michael Jordan. The sacrifices Michael Jordan had to make to become the person he is are unfortunate because it's a tragedy on the human side. But on the professional sporting side, that's what happened when it all comes together. Billy had most of those pieces. He was missing some other pieces, and look at how great he was anyway. That's really the moral of the story. The moral of the story is if Billy had the same determination and work ethic as a Tony Spreaderman and the same attention to detail and focus for greatness as Frederick, if he had those pieces, he'd be an easy number 1 because he would win everything because he had the physical ability and the entire skill set. I mean, mastery over every single. You could tell Billy to do anything on a table, and he'll do it. And if he sees it one time, he'll do it better than anyone else has ever done it. That's what kind of talent, physical ability we're talking about with Billy. I mean, he won his rookie singles when he was 9. My kids are 8. My kids are so far from doing anything with any motor skill like that. It's ridiculous. So that's all I got to say about Billy. And there's no disrespect or disparagement that he's not higher on the list. He could have been as high on this list as he wanted to be. And he's at number 10 by default because, I mean, that's probably as high as he could be without really caring and committing as much as these other guys. That's my rant about Billy. Adam, please.
Yeah, Mark, I think you really you nailed it there as far as the gas factor is concerned with Billy, because I'm just going to speak to it briefly, but this is a guy you can look at his physical ability and his athleticism. I would put money on throwing him in a time machine and putting him in any decade of foosball. He's going to be in the top 2 or 3 players. Whether or not he cares, he has the ability, he has that mind, he can do it on any table, which is why he's such, as Jim said, a good multi-table world champion. But I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about Billy as just a person. When I was coming up in the early 2000s, Billy was already on his meteoric rise, and Billy was besides Trevor Park, Billy was one of the first pro masters that I got to know. And I remember me and him and Moya Thielens hanging out at nationals or something. And these are people that were kind of semi-legendary at that point already. And we're just talking about Aqua Teen Hunger Force and whatever. in my head, and you have to understand, like there was this mythologized thing in my head, and I think a lot of new players probably do this, where they look to these their betters, so to speak, and see them on a high pedestal. And I think we often forget they're just humans. And there's Billy and I just hanging out talking about whatever, and it was mind blowing to me. So yeah, of everything that he can do on the table, which is immense and probably doesn't have much of a ceiling, just him as a person. And I think, and we've talked about this, I think he set the tone for the modern day foosball player, the nicer, more polite player that you see as from him, Tony Straightemann. You see now the Sam DeJohn's, like competitive as heck, right? But you ask yourself, is it different from the decades before? Definitely. So Billy Pappas, I think he serves as a touchstone, as a changing of the guard, so to speak, him and Tony, of the foosball eras from generation to generation. So very glad to see him on this list at number 10.
Coming in at number 9 on the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Foosball Players in American Tour History. Dan Kaiser.
Yeah, quick note, make sure everybody stays tuned after we're done with this list and afterwards. So, because there's more to be said about all of these players. I have a few more things I certainly want to say about Billy, among others. But coming in at number 9, a guy out of Portland, Oregon, a great TS player who was the only male 1970s player to win 3 world championships in open singles and open doubles. I mean, you ask why Dan Kaiser's on the list. You go back to the 70s, which all of us kind of referred to as the golden era. Well, he was the only male player to win 3 world championships in either open singles or open doubles. He won open doubles in 1975 with Kenny Rivera, another Hall of Famer, and then won the open singles world championship on TS in both 1976 and then 1979. And during that basically a 6-year period, he appeared in 5 total open world finals and almost won another world championship in 1980 when he and Rick Martin won the West World Championship, which basically had all the great players in it. It was a world championship event, but then lost to Mike Bowers and Tim Zeke Burns, who had won the East World Championship. Again, all those same players were there. So basically, there were 2 world championships that year, and then there was a playoff, which was won by Bowers and Zeke. Second in 1979 in open doubles as well with Tom Speer. Played with Speer in 79, losing to Wiz and Fur in the finals. The 1978 Tour Player of the Year, a great singles player. And again, I had a chance to play him one time, 1979, up in the at Seattle in the Tournament Soccer Warehouse. It was a $10,000 tournament where all the great stars were there. And I'd heard talk about him, and I watched him play. You know, it didn't have the most overpowering 3-rod, but was scrappy and would catch absolutely anything, which if you've ever played on a tournament soccer table was not necessarily the easiest things to do. His peers, when you talk to them, whoever it is, whether it's Ken Alwell, whether it's Johnny Lott or Steve Simon or any of these guys, when they talk about Dan Kaiser, just with the greatest of respect. He is the second highest tournament soccer player on this list. That should tell you something. Inducted in 1998, coming in at number 9, Dan Kaiser.
Yeah, Dan Kaiser is one of those players that you look at. I maybe if you're from that generation, it's something that really you key in on because you grew up around it. But I grew up with these names in my head, and it's always amazing to me that always we're talking about Furry and Wiswell, and of course Lafredo and Jackson. But Dan Kaiser is one of these players, and this is something I was talking to my dad about, who was there at that time during that time frame. What is it with this guy? Like why was he so competitive? What was it? Because did he have an overpowering 3-bar? No. And Jim, you spoke to that, and it's true. It wasn't that. It was a across the table level of play where he took what it is that he had and he distilled it into the best intention that he could do on the table with the natural talent of picking up the ball, which is what made him such a good singles player, obviously. And this is something we've seen this generationally, players like this who aren't necessarily have the highest amount of talent. I'm not saying he's not talented, but I'm saying that, what you do is to be a champion, you look at what your strengths are and you capitalize on them. And that is something that Dan Kaiser did. And it's no surprise to say what he did and how he did it for him to be number 9 on this list, Dan Kaiser.
Now, the player at number 8 on the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Foosball Players in American Tour History.
Ego is not a bad thing. Having an ego is what has let many players win this game. I mean, if you think of the greats, even back in the day, like Horton or Tommy, I mean, these guys were destroying people. And guess what? I guarantee you, their ego carried them through many championships and gave them many titles.
Ryan Moore.
Good stuff. Again, a testament to the strength of this list that a guy, Ryan Moore, who is just an incredible talent from both forward and goalie positions, would be at number 8. A guy that's really kind of underrated as a strategic player. We watch what he can do physically on the table, and it's almost unparalleled, with the length of his pull shot from goal and all the things he can do on a table. But he's a very smart player. Broke through. We had a chance to see Ryan. He won a junior singles international championship, world championship. In 2009, I watched him play in a final on the tech ball table over in the Netherlands, losing to Fred in a very close match. And so we saw him coming, and he had a nice run in Vegas, I think, in 08 or 09 as well. And then in 2010, he breaks through with an open singles world championship. He beat Billy Pappas in the final. And I remember that event because it was kind of weird. I had never seen Ryan Moore shoot a pull shot. And Brad Anderson and I were commentating the last couple of matches that Ryan played in. And Brad in particular was very critical of Ryan shooting a pull shot. Why is he doing this? Why is he shooting a pull shot? This is a snake shooter. We've never seen him shoot one. Well, he won the world championship shooting a pull shot that year. And of course, that pull shot in 2010 was nothing like what it became with the John Wayne and everything else. But he also won open singles the world championship on Tornado in both 2014 and 2021, a 10-time Tornado Open world champion. That's impressive. One of only, I think, 3 or 4 players to have won double digits here in the U.S. He became only the 3rd player to ever triple at the World Championships in 2021, just a few months ago. I think, again, motivation is an issue with him, kind of like with Pappas at times. He likes to have fun, and maybe he hasn't always really put the pedal to the metal, so to speak. But I think his A game, when he is at his best, very well could be the best I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of A games. And another thing, if he played goalie, and we saw him win a world championship playing goalie this year, right, or last year with Blake Robertson, if he played goalie on a regular basis, he would be the best in the world. And really, if he played on a regular basis playing the goalie position, he might be the best goalie ever, because not only is he as good a shooter as anybody, maybe Pappas, the only other guy in his class, but he's also an outstanding defensive player, really, really good defensive player. And again, we talk about whether they were the best players in the world at any one time. And in my opinion, he was the best player in the world for a couple of years in the mid 2010s. Just a remarkable talent on every rod, tremendous table smarts, unparalleled goalie skills, really no weaknesses on the table except maybe motivation. Will, of course, be a first ballot Hall of Famer when he's eligible. He's also the youngest player on this list, coming in at number 8, the great Ryan Moore.
Ryan, for me, is an enigma. He is a super talent. He grew up on the foosball tour, and I remember the first time I saw him, he was just this really tall, goofy kid. But he was going to all these events, of course, with Mary, and he grew up. Look at who his influences would later become. It's no mystery. He's probably the best goalie in the world right now, if not easily in the top 2 or 3, because he had Bobby Diaz playing nets for him, and he gets to soak up all that knowledge and all that information, all that intellectual, strategic, cerebral style of play. He's a sponge for it. I think the other great thing about this list is we don't know where he is in his career. He could go on and win for the next 20 years and rise to the top of this list. So there's plenty of runway left for things to move on this list up or down. He's not done playing. But I think the things about Ryan Moore that is mind-numbing, you could put this guy at goalie for almost any master, and they're a threat to win the tournament. You could put him at forward for almost any master, and he's a threat to win the tournament. He's a threat to win the tournament 2 ways. He's won, I don't know what the circle of people that have won open double world championships at forward and goalie, but it's got to be I didn't do the research. It's got to be a very small number of people, right? Todd, Ryan, who else? Did anyone else come to mind that won as a forward and a goalie?
Mares. Robert Mares.
There you go.
Mares would be the only other. Yeah.
Yeah, that's rare company.
There's 3 of them. 3 of them.
And you cannot win an open doubles world championship in any era in any year by yourself. You have to, like, your goalie's got to make blocks and put points up and do things in the clutch in crucial moments. So I agree with you 100%, Jim. It's when we start getting into these guys and gals, maybe that they can go up and down. These things can be argued. I think Ryan is fitting right now at this number because who's above him, but I don't leave it past Ryan to climb this list every single year if he feels like it. I also don't leave it past Ryan to just say, you know what, I'm done with foosball. I got a highly successful business. I got a family. He can go either way. That's why the list is intriguing anyway. Ryan, wonderful, amazing, super talent, and I think perfect right now where he is on this list.
Yeah, 2 things. I remember the first time I ever played Ryan Moore was I think it was a 2008 Warrior tournament in Los Angeles, and he was just coming up, and I was just kind of out of it. And I think we played in for a let's see, I think we're playing for a Warrior table in some pro singles playoff thing or whatever. Anyways, he threw everything, but I think he actually threw the kitchen sink at me. That's the amount of things that he could do, even at that time in 2008.
That explains
and
a lot.
It really spoke to his ability. And I think a lot of players can learn from the importance of being able to not just shoot a rollover in a pull shot well. I think that they need to look at that and realize that you don't just need to master one thing. It's important to be able to be good at quite a few things, because that's what makes you a champion, to be able to switch it up and change things in the moment as needed, which Ryan shows us that he can do. I'll tell you one thing though. Last week, when we were talking about Tommy Atkinson, I was talking about Tommy Atkinson. I said, he has more than any other Fooser in the last 30 years. His life has been covered by Inside Foos, as far as the ups and downs and everything that's been going on with him. And I think the other player that's been similar to that is Ryan Moore. He has grown up under the eye of foosball and Inside Foos, and we've seen him be kind of like, I don't know, what you wouldn't want to call him, like a bad boy, or maybe just a punk kid like any teenager would be, right? But he went from that back in the early 2000s to now he's a family man. He's a businessman. He comes to the tournament after being off for a couple of years and triples at Worlds, quadruples at Worlds. This is a guy where the sky's the limit, as Mark is saying, is depending on how into it he is. And I think we're starting to see a pattern develop, aren't we, in the lower half of this top 10, as far as where the gas factor really factors into where somebody's going to be sitting. But again, and Jim, you said this, he's a big fish in any pond, is Ryan Moore. And I'm just curious to see if he continues to try to play, continues to want to play. Where does he end up on this list 10 years from now? But again, well-deserved. Glad to see him where he is.
Here's the player who's ranked number 7 on the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Foosball Players in American Tour History.
Like a lot of kids, we don't have discipline, and we play really fast. So when I realized, hey, I need to move to this next level, what do I need to do? I need to value my possessions. I would actually tell myself, think like Terry. The thing that he was known for is just being 100% consistent all the time and making good decisions and playing smart.
Terry Moore.
Yeah. This is actually one of my favorite guys. Okay. This is a guy, I want to say it was, 1987, 88, somewhere in there. I'm at a tournament at Yankee Doodles in Long Beach, California. And the San Diego players would always come up for these. And there was a new group of them. And in the DYP, I drew a guy named Terry Moore. And I said, who's this? And they said, it's that big kid over there. And I he came over to the table and I said, all right, big guy, just hop back there and do the best you can. And, we were out in 4 or something, and he had very little skill. I had to switch back there a few times just to get a block. Well, about 3 years later, he's the best player in the world. And it was just shocking to see how quickly it happened. Of course, it was well documented in the Foosballers movie, and when he hit the road with Evan Stachlik and Robert Mares and company. Terry Moore, number 7. How about that? The player of the 90s. I think we can go with that. And here's why. During the decade of the 1990s, Terry Moore won 38 major open titles. Nobody else won more than 12, I don't think. And that included 6 world championships, a couple of open singles and open doubles with Bob Diaz in 1997. And he won singles championships in 92 and 98. Also 3 mixed doubles world championships. 38 major open titles in a decade. I don't think anyone has ever done that in any decade. Won 7 world championships overall, including doubling at the 1992 event. 46 total major titles on Tornado. He and Bobby Diaz, the team of the 90s, won 14 major titles together. He tripled, Terry Moore did, at the 97 Masters and the 98 U.S. Open. And, of course, helped revolutionize the game with his wins in 92 when he won the Hall of Fame Classic, really out of nowhere, and then followed that up with an open singles championship at the Tornado Worlds later that year. How about this? His best seasons, all right? 1996, he wins 5 open titles. That's impressive. 1997, he wins 8. 8 of basically 16. He wins half the open titles on tour in 1997, including the Open Doubles World Championship. In 1998, he comes back with 7 more, including the Open Singles World Championship when he beat Fred in Fred's first Open Singles Final. And he won 20 open titles in basically 3 seasons. Incredible consistency during his career. You talked about the gas factor. It was certainly there. Terry always really cared, and Terry always gave a full effort. each and every ball that he played. Incredible consistency and quite simply the best player in the world from 1992 through about 1998. Inducted into the Table Soccer Hall of Fame in 2008, coming in at number 7 on the top 50, Terry Moore.
Terry Moore. We were hanging out, man. In 1989, I played Terry Moore in rookie doubles at the damn Santa Clara Marriott Hotel at the big 15 grander over there. And he was shooting a pull shot. There was no rollover. He's a lefty. His 5 bar is wicked. And he beat me with a pull shot in rookie doubles. I played him in 1990 in amateur doubles at the Worlds and beat him. In 92, he plays me in the first round of open singles at the Worlds and wins the World Championship. Wow. So, I mean, there's a big change. There's a big delta there, right? There's a massive change. Terry Moore, what can you say? Like, I used to have Table Talk. It's the news letter you get when you're a member. And what you just like, and this is how difficult this list is. The 90s is the second golden era of foosball. And there was a strange thing happening. In the 90s, people were still waiting for the money to come back from the 70s. Like people had, all of us, we all had these dreams. Or like 17, 18, 19. The oldest of us was like 21. And we're all thinking, yeah, the money's going to come back. It's going to be this place. We make a career. Terry gets in his van. He's traveling across the country. He's got Tommy. He's got Robbie. They're playing all these tournaments where we're thinking there's a possibility of being a career. And Terry does everything he needs to do, and he's by far the most dominant. I was saying Table Talk. You just open that thing up. He's winning everything. Because you mentioned the majors. That's nothing compared to the states and regional tournaments he won. All the 5 granders, he won all of them. He was winning everything across the country. He commits to Todd Lafredo. Lafredo takes him under his wing. They have their like secret society training sessions. And Terry is the man of the 90s. And it can be argued now that we get into these top 7 people. It could be argued. We could argue for hours on if Terry should or could be higher in this list. And if you're in the 90s, you probably do argue he's higher on the list. Anyway, I think it's a beautiful tribute to Terry. I think he is probably right where he should be when you hear the rest of the names. But if you're in the 90s, he's the number 1 guy for sure. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, Terry Moore. The thing you got to know about Terry is that he is smart. His not as just his foosball IQ, but just talking to him in general, he's a very smart guy, and it's no surprise to me to see him have that, as you said, Mark, delta of just turning around and being just one of the best in the world in a very short time, because his ability to understand the game and talk about the game is incredibly important, and I think a very large portion of his success. I drew him in some ProMaster Pro DYP once at Hall of Fame years ago, and I'd never played against him before, and I was playing nets obviously for him, and he started talking to me about defense, about zones and stuff, and he started talking to me about foosball in ways that I had never comprehended because I was looking at it in such a linear fashion. Score 1 point here, score another point here. He was talking about things that were going to be happening in the next game. This is somebody that typifies what a pro master is and what that top percentile is in foosball because of their ability to think about foosball in that way, because of their ability to step back and look at it in a cerebral manner and not get so caught up in what it is that they should or shouldn't be doing. It's doing needs to be done in that moment. So yeah, Terry Moore on this list, and of course, Mark, that you're right. We could nitpick and move him up 1, down 1, whatever you want, but this is a great place for right now for him to be considering his resume. Terry Moore.
Next, the player ranked at number 6 on the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Foosball Players in American Tour History.
I just lost my mind, and a couple guys started screaming at me that I knew, and I just freaked out, and it worked. I didn't know what to do. It just beat me so bad, I just had to get crazy, and it worked, so I'll take it, man.
Tom Speer.
Well done, Tom Robinson. Of course, that clip right immediately following his win in 1994 at the Tornado Worlds. one of the smartest players to ever play the game. A guy who pushed the envelope. A guy who went outside the box in many ways. Wasn't an overpowering offensive player, but as we've talked about so many times on the program, the grade 5, just the intelligence, the way he would break a game down. One of only 6 players to win major titles on tournament soccer, Dynamo, and Tornado, with Bowers, Lafredo, Horton, Neboy, and Maloney. How about that? One of only 3 players to win world championships on all 3 tables, Lafredo and Horton being the other 2. And might have been the best in the world. And again, we talk about this. Were they ever the best in the world? 1979, Tom Speer, that year on tour, on the TS Tour, very well might have been the best player in the world. He won 5 titles that year and was in the final of all 3 open events at the World Championships, finished second in open doubles, finished second in open singles, won mixed doubles, could have tripled in 1979. That's how good he was. And I remember as a young player seeing this guy who seemingly was winning every tournament, or right there in the mix of every tournament, a guy that we had not heard of a year before. And a guy that basically was almost robotic in the way that he would stand at the table, no emotion, just a machine, right, doing it his way. But Tom would make a pretty seamless conversion to Dynamo after the crash of tournament soccer. He won the 1982 World Singles title, which was the first post-TS World Championship, and then would make an equally smooth transition to Tornado with 3 World's Finals appearances in 1985 and 1986, and then an Open Doubles World Championship in 1989 with Gus Trevino. 1989, probably his best year on Tornado, with 4 Open titles, including Masters Singles, which, as we've talked about, was a very prestigious title. Winning that green jacket was a big deal. Then in 1994, you heard the clip. In one of the sport's truly legendary performances, Tom won open singles at the Tornado World Championships, beating Terry Moore. And again, we talked about, Speer. We've talked about how Speer was kind of Terry's nemesis. And that was Tom's second career World Open Singles Championship. That win in 94, however, would be the last of his illustrious career, as he made fewer and fewer appearances on tour as the years went on. A man who really did it his own way, a competitor and a teacher who handed down his intelligent, methodical style of play to other Colorado players over the years. Inducted into the Table Soccer Hall of Fame in 2007. A guy that each time I talk about him, for a variety of reasons, I feel in my heart and in my gut, I feel emotional about this for reasons that we may or may not talk about following the show or following the list. But inducted in 2007 into the Hall of Fame, coming in at number 6, the great Tom Speer.
Dave Gummison, who contributed heavily to this list, he asked a critical question. By the way, Dave Gummison, who played in all these eras, whose pull shot probably is one of the top 10 of all time, who I'm not pandering to because I think he may be listening right now, all those things being true. He asked a critical question. In our discussions about this, Dave asks, is the player that you're looking at there because he or she is great, or is he or she a legend? And Tom Speer is a legend. Tom Speer's legend preceded him wherever he went. We, in my circle of friends, we're growing up in the early 90s, late 80s around foosball. We had this whole thing, screw the Masters, they suck, and we're not going to kowtow to anybody, and we're going to crush these guys. We had this no fear, bleed, die, and crush the Masters. They're horrible. We want to there's no respect thing. Tom Speer came over to Santa Clara for a foosball tournament. Lafredo was with him. It's a 15 grander. And that, no respect. No one respected Lafredo, but everybody, we were terrified of Tom Speer. My buddy Fernando, who's the biggest screw you guy of all time, hey man, that's Tom Speer. That's Tom Speer. Why don't you go talk to Tom Speer? Tom Speer is just, he's just the legend that comes from the 70s and persisted. His greatness was validated in his wins and success. He had impact on my game before I ever met him. I met one of his proteges, Joe Lefstick, in Las Vegas, and that game, seeing him and then understanding that was Tom Speer. Joe learned from Tom, and Joe was teaching me. Tom was teaching me, and I had never met Tom. This is 89. So when we talk about, we get to these final guys and gals, these final people, these are legends. And Tom Speer's legend is daunting and real, and I couldn't be more proud of him being on this list where he is, and once again, could be argued higher. But here we are, Tom Speer, number 6.
Yeah, Tom Speer, you say legend, and you're not wrong. Not just as a player, but, for me, foosball is about the human factor. I can't separate it. And Tom Speer it's been well documented with there was a news article on it on 9 News, local news there. The things that he's dealt with in his life, mental issues, and where he's at, and it's something that I think I feel very deeply personally about, because it's things that I've had my own issues with as well. Not the same things as Mr. Speer, but we all have these issues in life, and to have that extreme that polarization of self, where you are a champion and a legend decade after decade after decade, and also be where many of us would consider not in the best place now, but that's not for me to judge. He is living his life. When you talk about that, you look at the human factor in its entirety. When you think about that, and you ask yourself, as we play foosball, and we play our sport, and a lot of it's just a hobby now. Really, we're not making money on it like they did in the '70s. But you ask yourself, next time you're at a tournament and you see somebody just kind of hanging out by themselves, or maybe just looking a little bit frustrated, go give them a hey, what's up, man? Just a hello, just something simple, nothing big, because that's really what it is when we think about it. When we look at foosball in the context of the human concept of it, in the Tom Speers of the world, of which there are only one. We are part of a family, and it's really important that we remember that. And seeing Tom here on this list where he is reminds me of that right now. So Tom Speer.
Well said, Adam.
Moving on to number 5 on the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Foosball Players in American Tour History.
Now, I used to have so much fun. We would go to war. I mean, the table would be rocking and we would be screaming, and the balls would be flying. But as soon as the match was over, we'd be outside laughing and cutting up.
Cindy Head.
Yeah, we just had Cindy on a few weeks ago. In fact, she came on last week for a little bit, didn't she? She sure did. Cindy Head, Birmingham, Alabama. Of course, everyone who saw the movie Foosball is very familiar with her story. Cindy Head, quite simply, the winningest player in American foosball history. 68 major titles and an incredible 35 world titles on the U.S. Tour. And she actually won 2 others, multi-table back in 2006 when she went to play the multi-table ITSF event and won both singles and doubles, despite having never played on many of the tables that were there. Cindy, we talked about this last week. She came to the 1981 Tournament Soccer World Championships and doubled in her first event and last on that table, only because it was the very last event ever held on TS, of course. Won the World Championships on Tournament Soccer, one on Dynamo, one on Tornado, joining Tina Roton. Tina Wyatt is the only other ladies to do that, or the only other lady to do that. In 1987, at the World Championships, she quintupled, if you will. She won women's singles and women doubles on both Tornado and Dynamo, while also winning mixed doubles on Tornado. So she tripled on Tornado, doubled on Dynamo that year when they had both tables represented at the World Championships. She won every women's singles World Championship from 1986 through 1994, every one of them. And she won 14 out of 15 from 81 through 94, while also winning 10 women's doubles titles, World Championships during that span. The numbers are truly staggering for this incredible player. And there's more. The number of titles alone, obviously 68 of them, just remarkable. She was tough. She was gritty. She was loud. She was competitive. And really, when you watch her play, when you think back on these matches, she just physically and mentally overwhelmed everybody she played during her prime. There was really no one, maybe till later when Moya came along, that really tested Cindy during her career. She was that good. She was that much better than everyone else. Inducted into the Table Soccer Hall of Fame the same year I was, in 2006, which I also hold very close to my heart. What an honor to be able to go in with this incredible lady player, the greatest lady player of all time, coming in at number 5 on the list of the top 50 greatest players ever on the American Tour, the one and only Cindy Head.
You remember when I said earlier about the apex predator that has all the physical ability, all the mental toughness, and the determination and the will to be great? She is as far as women players go, she is the Michael Jordan and the Frederico Collignon of foosball. it's not like she wasn't tested every single era, every single generation. There was no limit to the number of women that came after Cindy to take her head off, and she dominated all of them. If anything, Cindy should also be commended for sitting atop the mountaintop and continuing to be motivated to just like take souls, is what she did. She slayed women players and dominated quite a few men players. And when you talk about the 68 titles, not unlike Terry, everything else she played in, she won too. So we don't know.
Yeah,
the titles
true.
are in the hundreds. We have no idea. She probably, if she has an actual trophy room, which I doubt that she collects and has all these trophies, it is, I mean, it's staggering. There was no way she could not, and she could also be argued to be higher on the list. There's no way she could have been left out of the top 10, being the winningest player in American history. And there's no asterisk next to it because if all comers, all eras, all generations, she was the most dominant player. So dominant that at Colorado State, and mind you, Cindy has like a completely destroyed shoulder and wrist issue. She still took second in women's singles to Noelia, who is like 40 years younger than her. She gets to the finals of women's singles, and she thinks she took second or third in expert singles, I think is what it was. One of them, because I'm pretty sure that the young man from Sammy Dijon took first. I think Sully took second. I don't remember the exact order, but it's not like she's completely dropped off with no arm. I could not place in a rookie singles event without my right arm, and Cindy's still placing second in women's singles and high in the other singles events with no arm. So testament to her greatness, her physical ability, but most importantly, it's not just the physical ability. We see people with physical ability come and go, and we spoke earlier on this list about Billy Pappas with all the physical ability, but without the commitment and dedication and fortitude to execute on it. Cindy has so much will and determination to win. If the guys beneath her had that same passion and commitment, they too would be higher on this list. So thank you, Cindy, for everything you've done, and well deserved here at the number you're at, number 5.
Yeah, just to expand a little bit more, Mark, on what you're saying, because what we're talking about, why she's on this list where she is because of the outcome, the results, decade after decade after decade. But the thing that amazes me about Cindy and what I've seen the last couple decades when I've been watching her, and what I've gotten my great honor this year to commentate on her matches, some of her matches, especially Colorado State, as you said, against Noelia Arcos, and a couple other matches she did in women's singles. We talked about the what, but it's the how, to me, that makes her a champion and puts her where she is for as long as she's been doing it, because and we talk about it in baseball. If you watch baseball, when you manufacture runs, you don't have a heavy hitting team, but you just put things together bit by bit. That's what Cindy Head does in any single match. It's not going to be coming at you from the 3-bar. It's going to be coming at you from every bar. It's not going to be coming at you from any single man. It's going to be every man from every angle, whatever it takes to win. And I think if you could distill that and put it in a jar and sell it at foosball tournaments, you'd make a fortune, because there's a lot of people that just don't know how to create those advantages in their game. And that's what makes her so deadly and so dominant for as long as she has been, even now. So yeah, at this, where Cindy Head is now on this list is very, very well deserved.
We're down to number 4 on the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Players in American Tour History. At number 4, Doug Furry.
You know, when we look back on the decade of the 1970s, and I had a chance to sort of look in at the tail end of it, and I did see this man play, Doug Furry, and Jim Wiswell. But, you talk about Wiz, you talk about Speer and Kaiser and Martin and Bowers and all these guys. Well, the most legendary player out of the 1970s is Doug Furry. When you talk to other players, and literally across the board, every single player who experienced the tournament soccer tour that we have talked to, from Ken Alwell to Dave Gummison and others, Doug Furry is always number 1 on their lists of greatest players of that decade. Truly a legend. I met him for the first time just a few years ago in Las Vegas when he showed up for the Hall of Fame. Just happened to be in town, I think, for another convention, and came across to the hotel to come to the Hall of Fame ceremony. And it literally was, I was like intimidated. It was like I got chills. I'm thinking, this is Doug Furry. I mean, talk about legends, Mark. This is the legend from that decade. Recognized by nearly, like I say, all of his peers as the greatest player of the TS era. Another product of that Minnesota high school program, the Nut Goody program of the mid 1970s, a great goalie, great singles player. As a very young man, as a teenager, finished second in open singles at the 1975 World Championships, his first significant finish, and then won super singles at the 1977 event of that same name. Really thought of as a goalie, but a great singles player as well. Teamed with Jim Wiswell to form the team of Wiz and Fur, the greatest team of the decade of the 70s. Jim and Doug won the 1978 Super Doubles title, and then won Open Doubles at the 1979 event. And then Doug came back and teamed with Johnny Lott to win the very last World Doubles title on TS in 1981. Well, he won more than 20 titles in open doubles, open singles, and mixed doubles on the TS tour. Another player, I think, who was obviously devastated by the end of tournament soccer and, of course, the subsequent death of his partner, Jim Wiswell, later that year. Did play a bit on the Dynamo Tour the early 1980s, had 3 top 3 finishes at Dynamo Worlds events before finally calling it a career after the 1984 season. Considered, I think, as smart of a player as the sport has ever seen. A great goalie, a forward, a singles player, and teammate. Inducted in 1996, the very first player actually inducted after the revival of the Hall of Fame in 96. Coming in at number 4, the great Doug Furry.
I'm going to say a quick few words about Doug Furry and then have Adam take over, because the almanac and having Terry Gilson, his father, as a resource is just incredible when we start talking about these TS players. But I will say this about Doug Furry. There's a lot of chatter online, and I contribute to it, and I incite some of it, and I pour gasoline on some of it, and I have a lot of fun. I'm self-entertaining with it. But a lot of the chatter is around the 70s and the 70s greats and the fall of TS. And one of the arguments that is repeatedly made is how deep the field is. The field was so deep. There were all these great players and all these thousands of people playing. And if the argument is that on the one side, by some TS legends like Johnny Lott and Steve Simon and others, Doug Furry was still dominating the hell out of you guys. Doug Furry, is still one guy beating everyone's ass. So, I mean, let's go there for a minute. If we want to talk about how the fields were so much deeper and the intensity was so much higher because we were playing as a career, well, then Doug Furry was the absolute man on the mountaintop, showing everyone how to get it done. There's no denying that. When you look at the results, the outcomes, when you look at everyone, he has a pick of a litter to play with, winning in singles, and as a goalie, he is, we talk about the top 1%. It doesn't matter if it's 5 people playing or 3,000 people playing. It seems like there's 1% of guys and gals who win everything, and those are your true masters. And so Doug Furry, the absolute alpha predator master from the 70s, in the deepest fields of all time, still winning everything. How could he not be at the top of this list, arguably, within these last 4 spots, which can go either way? And I mean that. We've been saying that from 7 onward. When we start getting to the top 3 and 4 on this list, there are plenty of arguments to be made how this could be switched up in any order. Doug Furry, amazing, brilliant talent, the man of the 70s. I'm excited to talk about him for a second. Adam, please take over.
Yeah, both Mark and Jim have really touched well on his playing ability, what he meant within the context of the sport, and what his record, which was amazing at the depth of field that he was playing in. But I want to just switch gears a little bit and just touch back on something I said last week about the fall of tournament soccer. And I likened it to the destruction of the Library of Alexandria. For those who don't know, that was a repository of knowledge a couple thousand years ago, not a couple thousand, about 2,000 years ago. Anyways, it got burned down a couple times. But anyways, long story short, the point is it was a repository of knowledge, and the estimate is every time that thing got burnt down, it set civilization back quite a few decades or centuries because knowledge was lost. And when you look at tournament soccer and you look at the people that were playing as a career, like, it was no joke. It was a career back then. And Mark, you touched on this. I think it was with Terry Moore, where in the 90s, during the second golden age of foosball, they were all waiting for the money to come back. And the money was never going to come back because tournament soccer built its business model on a house of cards, right? And when we see how it affected players like Doug Furry and Jim Wiswell, and we look at our history, and we have to honor our history and pay attention to it lest we repeat it, which we are in a lot of different ways. And how to grow from that, I think there's a lot of positive things going on. But when we're talking about the top 10 of this sport, whether or not you disagree with maybe the order that it's in, the top 10 tells a story. The story is telling us about foosball, and it's telling us about the sport that we love and how we treat it and how it treats us and what actually happens in our interactions with it. Doug Furry is not a cautionary tale. He's a champion. But what happened to him after tournament soccer fell apart and he left the sport and just wasn't that interested in it afterwards is something that we all need to pay attention to as we go forward and look at this kind of as a rebuilding period post-COVID in foosball. So again, Doug Furry, well-deserved on this list, well-deserved at the point that he's at, and more so than that, a fixture, kind of a beacon of foosball history for us all.
Next, the player ranks at number 3 on the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Players in American Tour History.
In my opinion, you can see someone's personality coming out in the way that they play. Sure. You express yourself through the way that you play. When you play, you want to have a good time. You want to have fun. And yeah, I didn't say, well, I'm doing this to be different. I want to be an individual. That was never the case. Right. It was what felt right to me and what I enjoyed doing. Right. And that's how I enjoyed playing foosball. So.
Tony Straightemann.
Adam, you talked about it earlier with I don't think you mentioned, Billy Pappas, Ryan Moore, and how I've kind of been there for their entire careers. Well, I can say that about Tony Spreaderman as well. And I think on a personal level, I was probably closer to Tony throughout those years than anyone else. He and I have a great friendship. Two guys that have spent a lot of time trying to make a living at foosball. And he and I always have such great conversations. A guy that, not a highly educated as far as formal education goes, but a really smart dude, right? Tony Spreaderman, possibly the greatest singles player the sport has ever seen. And I'm going to say that's international, that's worldwide. Certainly the greatest we've ever seen in this country. He's won 8 career World Singles Championships, the most ever on the U.S. Tour, and won 5 in a row between 2015 and 2019 when he was just so dominant. He burst on the scene back in 2001 when he won 5 titles at the World Championships. He won rookie singles, he won rookie doubles, semi-pro singles, semi-pro doubles, and 17 under with a very young and skinny Ryan Moore, who was actually probably the worst player on that table of 4 that included also Robert Atha and Dylan Anderson in that 17 and under final. 2001, he finishes, those 5 events, wins those 5 events. 1 year later, in 2002, he was in the open singles final, losing to Fred. 1 year after that, in 2003, he won his first world singles title. And again, just a remarkable singles player. Of course, a great forward, great all-around player. But in singles, we've never seen anything like it. Won the national singles championship in 2004, beating Billy Pappas. And if you guys haven't seen that match yet, I believe it's at InsideFoods.com. It's Tony Spreaderman versus Billy Pappas. Just an incredible match. These two 19-year-olds going at it for the national singles championship and doing it in completely different ways. Great friends, great competitors. Both guys, just such great sportsmen. Tony won Open Doubles World Championships with Robert Moritz in both 2013 and 2016. And he and Robbie also won the Multi-Table World Championship in 2013. And we've talked about it before. And, again, Tony Spreaderman and Robert Moritz, one of the 5 best teams in the history of American table soccer, right? But, Tony has made choices, business decisions over the last 6, 8, 10 years that really cost him, I think, maybe another 3 to 5 world championships in open doubles. Does he move past Lafredo, on this list, or does he move up on this list? And of course, I'm giving away, who might be 1 or 2, but I think it's a given. He and Rob also, of course, won multiple Hall of Fame Classic titles. And won more than 20. How about this? Tony Spreaderman has won more than 20 open titles at the Texas State Championships alone. Won 6 in a row in doubles with Brandon Moreland and numerous singles, mixed doubles, etc. Basically the best player in the world for most of the past 9 or 10 years. Of course, we all remember that streak a couple of years ago when he went nearly 2 years without losing a singles match. Won everything he played. A streak that was unprecedented in the sport's history. Tony, a member of every USA World Cup team since 2009. He's won 6 gold medals with Team USA. A master of high percentage execution and an incredibly intuitive tactician whose fibro may be the best the sport has ever seen. Tony has revolutionized the sport with his style of play and aggressive, consistent approach to playing the game. Obviously, a no doubt first ballot Hall of Famer when he becomes eligible in about 4 years. Coming in at number 3, the astoundingly great Tony Spreaderman.
Tony is a special competitor. He's a special person. He's completely unique. He's a foosball genius by light years ahead of the next person. He's forgotten more than I will ever know about foosball, and it's way beyond that. We've had deep discussions on more than one occasion now with Tony, and he's not in the same universe when it comes to competition. I've watched Tony, and there's a gap when I'm totally away from foosball for about 8 years. But he was living in San Jose, California, and he was working with my buddy Dave Rosenthal with Rosenthal Plumbing. He's living with Dana Marr. Is before he won his first world title, and he was an angry 17-year-old chippy kid, and he had his reasons for winning were a very narrow kind of like, wanted to crush people and beat the snot out of them. And he's gone through I think he's gone through at this point every iteration of competitive desire and interest to where he's arrived now, which is rare air. Where he's arrived now is and I'm not sure how he loves foosball now, but the last time I asked him this question, which was recently, how do you love the game? He competes for the purity of every ball. It's like and that's why when we talk about him playing forward in certain situations, whether it's economic or otherwise, his partner in doubles doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because he's going to control what's in front of him. He's going to be the defender of the ball when it's in front of him. He's going to be the offender and the possessor of the ball when it's in his possession, and he's going to play the purity of that possession. He's a complete, unique animal who's arrived in some ascended place in terms of competition. It's completely unique. And I couldn't be more proud of where he's evolved into as a man and a competitor. It's very challenging because there's a lot of discussion when we got to this last 10. I mean, the top 20 was hell. We got to the top 10 and we were still having debates about it. One of the things, and that's my last point about Tony, one of the places I arrived with Tony being at number 3, above Doug Furry, was this. Plenty of people quit foosball because there was no money in it. And for me, greatness, there's a correlation between greatness and dedication and commitment to our sport. And even me, when I realized when I was a senior in high school, there's no money in foosball, I got to go to college. This is a pipe dream. It ain't ever happening. I chose college. We've seen this choice be made over and over. Doug Furry, Ken Alwell, Jim Stevens, he chose the media side over competing. When I talk about greatness, Tony chose to play anyway. It's not like Tony couldn't have a better job and be making a lot more money doing other things. He continued to play foosball for the passion and the love when all others, many others, decided to concede and resign and give up the love of the sport and take a livelihood instead with more material things. Tony didn't choose that. So that's why Tony is number 3 at least, and could be argued to be higher. And by the time he's done, which may be 10, 20, 30, or 2 more years, he may well arrive higher on this list. That's why Tony is great for me. And Tony at number 3. What else can I say?
That's beautiful, Mark.
It is beautiful. Yeah, Tony's a Buddhist cone. One of these things that exist. He is the one. The sound of one hand clapping is Tony. I don't want to get more into. I mean, Mark, you already said it beautifully, but I want to. I'll just tell this story. I was at the 2018 Palm Springs tournament, the Warrior tournament that they had down there. Used to have down there, and Tony was, I think, out for playing. One of the finals matches or whatever. And it wasn't a big tournament, but it was still a fun tournament. But you figure still before a tournament, any kind of finals match, you're still going to kind of be into it or, interested in what's happening. And I saw him out sitting in the back porch, and just staring off into space. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's a master. This guy has arrived. He's about to float off and transcend up into the heavens. And I go out there, and I'm like, I seriously, literally, like, did a little tiny steps towards him to be quiet. To, like, I didn't want to disturb him, because that's how much reverence I have for the game, and that's how much of a huge awkward dork that I am, right? And I kind of sit quietly on the seat near him, and I say, hey, Tony. And he goes, hey, and I go, well, what's up? And he's looking. He's like, I realize what he's doing. He's staring at this mound of dirt, and he's looking at these flowers on this mound of dirt. And I'm thinking, this guy's got some great things going on here. And I said, what's going on? And he goes, well, you see that sprinkler system there? I said, yeah. And he goes, I don't understand how that's wired. Like, where is it actually getting the water from? Because if you look at the way that the gradient is there, it can't possibly be pushed up unless so and so and this and this and that. And I know nothing about what he's talking about. By 2 seconds, then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what happened to this great master? We're talking about plumbing and stuff, and I don't get what the hell he's talking about. And that, for those of you out there who want to become champions, that is the height of transcendence when you've got a big match coming up and you're looking at trying to figure out something else, because wherever you exist, you're there and you're not there at the same time. And I know that's wishy-washy, but I'm sorry. That's why we're not all champions, because I get it too on paper and in theory, but somebody like Tony, who doesn't take it, he takes it seriously, but not seriously, you end up in these kind of word puzzles like that. That's why I call him like the Buddhist cone, because he's just there, as Mark said. And he's sitting there thinking about plumbing. Tony Spreaderman, number 3.
And now we move on to the number 2 position on the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Players in American Tour History.
I try to be fair, and that's really kind of a big thing. When I was younger, I really didn't like people that weren't fair. Now I understand that there's a lot of depth to the vision, but like I said, that was the part of me that was like Tony. I would find reasons to not like people, but that's not really my nature either. I'm kind of good-hearted, and I don't like all that drama. That's why I don't like the popularity.
Todd Lafredo.
I was a Laker fan during the 1980s, right? Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, James Worthy, Michael Cooper, etc. And as it was going on, as I was watching these games during that era, I would say to myself, just be thankful that you are here right now watching this incredible greatness, because it isn't going to be here forever, right? So make sure you appreciate what you are seeing. And that's how I feel with Todd Lafredo. It's like I have been the beneficiary of Todd Lafredo's career for the most part. I didn't cover the sport in the 70s or 80s. Early 90s, I came on board, obviously aware of his history, but then I got to cover Todd. I got to watch Todd. And while, Todd can be an ornery guy every once in a while, when you watch him on the table, there's a certain a sublimeness, but I don't even think that's a word, but there's a certain, there's something about Lafredo watching him play where you just know you are in the presence of greatness, right? It isn't just physical either. It's this guy who can think 3, 4, 5 moves ahead, who always adjusts to the adjustment, and it's my job and what I do. I'm always looking at that. This is a guy, probably the greatest pull shooter ever as a forward, while also being a top 3 all-time goalie and maybe even the best goalie ever. 25 world titles, 20 in open doubles with 7 different partners. In fact, between the years 1983 and 2012, there were 31 world championship doubles competitions, and Todd won 20 of them. 2/3 of them, Todd Lafredo wins. 12 of those, of course, with Frederick Colinyon. Obviously shocked the world in 1977 when he and Gil Jackson won as 17-year-olds on the World Championships on TS in St. Louis. Probably the player of the 1980s with 20 open titles, 7 world championships in that decade. And 1990s weren't bad either, as he won 6 world doubles titles during that decade and a mixed doubles title, 7 total titles at the World Championships during the 90s. one of his last, and I've thought about this, and of course it was documented in the movie Foosballers. One of his last big performances came in 2016 when he finished second, the rare triple, the second place triple, when he finished second in all 3 open events at the Tornado Worlds. Finished second in open singles to Tony. And he had Scotty Weidman. Of course, he hurt himself. Lafredo hurt his shoulder in singles, had to play goalie in open doubles, and still somehow with a rusty, mostly retired Scotty Weidman, still was able to reach the finals of open doubles and also finish second in mixed doubles with Kristen Grogan. And then maybe the last hurrah for him, at least up till now, and who knows what could happen in the future. He'll be 62 years old this year. But he teamed with Blake Robertson in 2019 to finish second at the Tornado Worlds, of course, losing to Tommy Orr Jr. and Brandon Moreland. Remains to this day a competitive force on the pro tour, a true icon in the history of table soccer worldwide, an extraordinary talent, both mentally and physical, a man who has won in every era and on every American table, and even has won 3 world championships internationally, a couple of multi-table senior championships, and I think 4 gold medals with Team USA. Inducted into the Table Soccer Hall of Fame, really a no-brainer, in 2005, coming in at number 2 on the list of the top 50 greatest players in the history of the American Tour. Of course, Mr. Todd Lafredo.
Todd Lafredo. So he's the guy, right? I mean, he's through the 90s. He's the guy. He wins in 1990, my first world championships. He's beating Kevin Everson and Mark Rudnicki in the finals of open doubles. I saw him. He won everything before then that I was at too. He won the open doubles at San Bernardino with Gus Trevino against Blaine Steinmetz and Steve Morey in the finals. Then he won at Santa Clara open doubles at my first tournament ever. I watched him and Johnny Horton play together in open doubles. So he was winning every open doubles event of every event I was going to. And if you didn't grow up playing in the 90s and see him back when he was in his prime physical ability, the pull shot still looks better than mine ever did, and he's 62. What do you think it looked like 30 years ago? It was obscene, and he could hit any hole whenever he wanted. He actually paid a lot more attention back then. He focused more and tried way harder as a forward. He was way more astute. He's just been around for so long, we take these things for granted. And the great irony is, I was putting together a video edit for the tour kickoff, the next one coming up, and I was looking at the 2020 tour kickoff. I didn't know. I wasn't even back in foosball yet, by the way. That's astonishing, right? I got back in foosball like April, right in the pandemic. I started goofing around with foosball again. And Todd Lafredo and Darren Bone are playing Kevin Romero and Cespedes Martinez in the finals of open doubles. And Todd's winning the open doubles final. And it's just another major for him. The tour kickoff is still a major, and it's just one more in the books. And we could take it for granted easily, but my closest friends who I grew up playing with have never got that open doubles title. They still don't have one. And Todd just checks another one off in last year in the final. It's his greatness. It's easy to take his greatness for granted if he just started playing in like 2009 or, some of these younger modern era players. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, Todd, and he's been around, he's done everything. No, if you were there, if you saw it, if you were there, he'd chew you up and eat you alive. The last thing I'll say is we talk about these generational players, and I don't want to overuse it, but Doug Furry for sure in the 70s, and probably Bacon and Horton in the 80s. But in that, Todd was there that whole time, and he was kicking ass and taking names that whole time, and he didn't stop, and he never stopped, and he's still doing it, and he still did it last year. And he may be at the very tail end now. He may be at his true twilight, but don't be surprised if he goes and plays goalie for someone, or if he plays forward for someone and still wins another one. Can never count him out. So anyway, Lafredo, easy. Well, not super easy, because there's an argument at him number 1. But gosh, right there at the top, right where he belongs. Adam?
Yeah, let's talk about divergent paths. You got Todd Lafredo, and you got Doug Furry. Doug Furry was in it for the business. I don't know the particulars of why he stopped, but he did with tournament soccer. But Todd Lafredo kept going afterwards, after his amazing. One of the first things I ever heard. Kids grew up hearing stories about the Berenstain Bears or Berenstain Bears, depending on era you lived in. There was all kinds of things that, Little Red Riding Hood. I learned about Lost in Space. I was learning about Zeke Mullins. Those are the stories that I heard growing up. And I heard about Todd Lafredo. So when I look at this in the context of this list, in the context of the history of foosball, I think of Doug Furry as kind of the promise broken by foosball, by tournament soccer, as it was created, as it where it went as a business. But I think of Todd Lafredo as kind of the hope retained. He kept going for whatever reason. I don't know. He was good. Like he's a champion. He's a competitor, and that's exactly the kind of person that he is at his core when he's playing foosball. And it's very interesting to see that or think about it in those contexts when you have decades of experience and of playing. But more so than that, what I think that people really need to take away from Todd Lafredo's career and what he continues to do now is this. He is mechanics personified. I watched him talk about his pull shot to somebody. He likens it to kind of a golf swing. And he says when he starts hitting it too hard, he knows it and he has to stop hitting it harder. And that's when it goes harder. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense, but I get it. All right, fine. I'm going to write that down in my notebook. And this is what we're talking about. To be a champion for that long, to be that good for that long is about knowing your body and knowing yourself. The same thing I said about Cindy Head. It's no surprise that these players are at this list and this upper echelon of players, because it's not just so much the strategies they employ. It's not just so much the desire that they have, but it's the fact that they actually know themselves. And I think that's a quote from somewhere, I'm not sure, but they know themselves. And that is so important for anybody out there that's wanting to become better or a high competitor at this sport, is to know yourself. So for Todd Lafredo to be number 2 on this list is no surprise.
Now, the moment you have been waiting for. The FoosTalk Live Top 50 Players in American Tour History now reveals the number 1 player.
When it comes to being the best foosball player in the world, which you have been and still are considered as one of the best, if not the best.
Who's the purest best player? Him by far, in my opinion. The
Ball
best
player of
player
all time.
is Frederico.
Frederico Collignon.
Yeah, to me and another guy that I've had a chance to cover from the very beginning, it's actually inarguable, in my opinion. This is the greatest player, quite simply the greatest player that foosball has ever seen, the greatest player to ever grace the rods, a legendary performer who has won world championships on 10 different tables. Here's a stat for you. This should pretty much say it all. Frederick Colinyon tripled 5 times at the Tornado Worlds, 2000, 2002, 2004, 2007, and then his very last appearance in 2012. He won a total of 26 world titles on the American Tour. That is the most ever for a male player. And the thing that's funny is that Tornado, despite that incredible excellence, might have been his worst table. He was really unchallenged on every other table in the world. Nobody touched him. I would go to the Bonzini World Championships and he would triple every year. And if someone won a game against him, they would celebrate. If a Frenchman won the game, the French national anthem would break out. They were so happy about it. He also added probably another 10 plus titles in Las Vegas at the Hall of Fame Classic. And the one time he came to the national championships one time, 2002 in Atlanta. And he quadrupled. He won open singles, he won open doubles with Lafredo, he won open mixed, and he won masters singles that year as well. Reached his first final ever back in 1998. And then just literally right after that tournament, paired up with Todd Lafredo. And of course, after that, they really rewrote the history books. When you count forward shootout, goalie war, DYPs, and every other specialty event, he probably won more than 50 individual world titles. This is a guy who would play every single event at the Tornado Worlds and go deep into every competition and win everything. My wife, Amy, I was talking with her earlier. She drew him in 2009 in a DYP that had about 200 teams in it. They lost the first round, and Amy didn't block a single shot, couldn't clear the ball. And after the match is over, Fred looks over and says, "Sorry, I should have been better," taking full responsibility. They then went on and won their next 16 matches and won the event. The first time I ever saw them, 1996. I think it was actually 95 I saw him. He's a young European player coming in, comes in, plays some of the lower events. He's shooting a pin shot, which we all knew no one could shoot a pin shot on this table and have any success. In 1996, he finishes in the top 10 in open doubles, open singles, and open mixed doubles. And this is when we first got the idea. And then we got excited about him. We watched him. I saw him and I said, this guy's got something. He's special. He's different. If anybody can win with a pin series or a European style game, it's this guy. Literally as close to perfection as we have ever seen on a foosball table. Inducted into the United States Table Soccer Hall of Fame, also a member of the International Hall of Fame, of course, in 2014, of course, at number one. And there's only one guy, in my opinion, that this could be. Despite the greatness of all these others, it's Frederick Colinyon.
Yeah, Fred is a true foosball savant. He's a genius outside of foosball. I believe he has eidetic memory. I think he has photographic memory. His hand speed, when you talk to other masters who you think have great hand speed, they will tell you that Fred's hand speed is lights out. Not even the same, like Billy Pappas, who's known for having incredibly fast hands, and Tony Spreaderman as well, with all the hard work and dedication and commitment. The hands are lightning fast. They'll just both tell you, no one's got hands like Fred. And what happens when all the stars line up? And once again, not to overuse it, he's like the next level. Like you get these generational foosball players, and then you add this whole other crazy intellect and muscle memory and actual photographic memory and physical ability, and then the determination to win and the closing. Like the dude is a shark, smells blood in the water. How many times have we seen him in a 4-4 situation pass and score like it's a 0-0 situation? By far, that is the biggest differentiator. I've had these arguments all over social media, mostly because they're entertaining for me, but also because not that I don't believe them, but it's this idea that a master is someone who wins championships. A master is someone who has the mental toughness and the self-awareness and the emotional intelligence and puts it all together and the physical ability and closes matches and wins them. And the differentiating or the gap between the people that win and lose happens when the pressure's on. There's plenty of science and research and study on what happens to the body and the brain when you're in a tense situation and how your motor skills just shut down. This is what separates the men from the boys in the championships, is the people that could do this. And Fred just did it like it was easy. Like, how many times have we seen him do it? So the last story I'll tell about Fred is I had the great privilege of designing a belt with Fred for our Kickstarter, and we were putting the belt together, and I give him the first draft of the belt, and it has his championships from every year on both sides of the belt, and I believe it's right, and I run it by Jim, and Jim thinks it's right, and Fred's like, nope, it's not right. There's something missing from 2003, and it's open mixed. And I'm like, Fred, are you sure? He's like, yeah, this is wrong. And so lo and behold, man, the guy knows every single thing he won because we were wrong. He won something every single year. And I got to look. He won an open event every single year starting in 2006. No, I'm sorry, that's wrong.
98.
From 98 on, he won a world title every single year from 98 to 2012, at least one.
Yep.
And most years it was multiple. So there's never been a fooser like him. And it's hard to say these kinds of things because it's, you use these superlatives. I can't imagine anyone ever being as dominant as him ever again. I just can't. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how it would ever happen. So not just a generational player, a unicorn of a fooser, and we'll probably never see anything like this man ever again. That's my Frederick rant.
Yeah, yeah, I am. I want to say one or two things about him, but Mark, I do want to bring up something that you posted a long time ago, well, maybe a year or two ago, about a conversation that you had with him, right? Do you remember this? You posted on Facebook about how he brought up something that happened like 500,000 years ago, a match that you and him played, right? And he remembered to the T the way that I kind of remember what my son's face looks like, maybe. I don't know. Could you speak to that for a quick second? Because you talked about his memory.
Yes, I played him in open singles in 2004 in the first round, and No, second round. Sorry. So I destroyed some rookie that I can't even remember what the heck happened in the game. And then I played Fred in the next round, and he destroyed me. And we were having a conversation about it. He brought up details from the match, and I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? And so he remembered, and I remembered it because it was a memory for me, but I didn't even remember it in the detail he remembered it. And so it was really like, are you serious, dude? That's like, I'm your second round opponent. You ran over me and you won the tournament. And so, okay, it was really, really mind blowing. But I want you to continue on. But there are a couple guys like that. I had an hour phone call with Johnny Horton right before this FoosTalk Live thing we're having right now, and he remembers stuff in absolute detail. There's a handful of these guys, and maybe gals too. I don't know any of the gals, but they remember with photographic memory the minutia of matches they played. Anyway, Adam.
Yeah, no, thank you. I just love that story and it really speaks to what I want to talk about Colignon is that there was something early on when I first heard about him, when I first started playing. The great Kathy Brainerd told me that he is poetry in motion. And that's a term that gets bandied about a lot, but it is actually quite literally true. He is poetry in motion. And on the outside looking in, if you don't play that much, or if you're new to the game, or if you're even like trying to rise up in the ranks, you look at a player like him play, and it's not barely discernible from magic. And that's what makes him so great. But what that greatness isn't just existing in a vacuum. What that is an amalgam of all the different things we've been talking about him. We've been talking about his ability to close, which is what a champion is, and which is why he's number one. We've been talking about his hand speed, his focus, his ability, his intelligence, everything that he does, his memory. It's not just one thing, it's everything that makes him who he is and what puts him at number one. But more importantly than that, let's talk about this list in general as a whole. Every group of 10, give or take, maybe one or two, represents a group or ability level of players, right? And each one, I've been looking at it, and I keep thinking in each one there's a counterweight, there's a counterbalance that happens near the top of each group of 10 that we've been talking about. And at the very top of the 50, you have the greatest counterbalance of all, which is going to be the number one. In this case, is Collignon. And what that creates for us as fans, as people that talk about foosball a lot, is context. Who is it that he was beating? Who is beating him in the time frame that he played in? And that sets the tone for that top 10. That sets the tone for the 10 beneath that, and the 10 beneath that, and the 10 beneath that. He is basically the baseline. And if you're doing testing for different things, he's the control. Frederico Collignon is the control. And that's something to think about going forward, because everybody is going to be compared to him forever and ever and ever. Mm-hmm. Which is why Frederico Collignon, given everything that he has done and everything that he is number one.
Yeah. No doubt.
Gosh, I can't believe it's over, guys.
It is.
Let's do it again. Nah, we're just starting.
We start.
We're about 12 minutes to talk about all this, but what a great job by everyone on this. Great, I was sitting back listening to you two guys, and just amazed by what I was hearing. That was great stuff by both you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. The bios really substantiate everything.
Tom. Thank you, Tom,
for
everything
that you are. You are the counterbalance of my heart, buddy.
Man, that was professional stuff. Hey guys, a couple of things. All right, here there were 50 players, obviously, right? 51 players actually. There were 45 men and 6 women on the list. There were 49 Americans, 2 international players, of course, Fred and Moya. 10 players from the state of Colorado, 10 players from the state of Texas, 6 from Minnesota, 5 from Florida, 3 from California, 2 from Illinois, 2 from Oklahoma, and then 1 from Oregon, Massachusetts, Idaho, Kentucky, Washington, Wisconsin, Michigan, South Dakota, Ohio, Nevada, and Alabama. Of course, from British Columbia and Belgium as well. But what a list.
Yeah.
And we have a few minutes to kind of talk about the process. We have a little bit to talk about maybe some things that we saw differently, some changes we would have made. So, but we went quite long on the first part, but we got a few minutes.
Jim, it just really bugs me. It really bugs me at the beginning of the show. Tom called it an enchilada. I just really can't
Oh,
get over.
stop!
Can't get
Stop!
over it.
Get over it already, man. Wow.
Well, so we could.
Somebody's
I
got to
mean,
be
we could
neutral.
talk. I'm sorry, Tom.
No, that's
Go
all
ahead.
right. I'm just saying somebody's got to be
Just
neutral.
go.
Whatever.
Go. What do we look, man? This list. Go ahead, Adam. Please talk. I'm waiting for you.
I don't even know where to begin. This has been emotional. This has been emotional. And I told you, Jim, and I told you, Mark, like, when we first started talking about doing this, I didn't want to do it. And I didn't want to do it because it's like, this is an apples to Bentleys, like, how do you even go down this thing? And I think I'm happy with what we have. And I think, again, it's going to incite, obviously it already has been a lot of conversation about it. But I think it needed to be done, and I'm happy with what we have. But if I do have one thing, I feel like Atkinson should have been higher. But I just like, what do you do?
Look, I think we got the top 10 right. And I think we could have. I think when we got argumentative, which was good, healthy exchange and transaction. Tommy was what? He was like 11, right? So what do you do?
Yeah.
And then,
Right,
and like,
I
I
know.
think there could be arguments that Murray was too low, that Bacon was too low. Horton, who I talked to, I told you, like an hour, like 2 hours, he'll argue to the death that he should have been higher. And there's some argument that he should have been higher. But it
He
means
should
someone
have
has
been in the top 10, but it really was his own doing that he wasn't, right? I mean, really, when we are putting this list together, we are painted, our opinions and our votes are painted by other things that might have happened during the course of, in this case, Horton's career.
Or
right?
to color that differently, it's painted by how much more they could have done if they had made different choices of the way you described
Right.
it. And
That's
right,
a
so
good
like
point.
Billy's another one, right? I mean, if we could talk about this, but Billy could have been swapped out for Tommy or Johnny, maybe even Murray, but definitely between Johnny, there's strong arguments for Bacon. So like it's very, very difficult, man. Very, very
the eye
difficult.
test put Billy in the top 10, and that run of singles championships, no doubt
Right.
about it.
That was huge.
But we have a guy in the top 10 in Billy Pappas who won 7 major titles.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And yet none of us really have any problem with him being there. Yes, you could have put Horton higher. You could have put Atkinson there. But the other thing for me, we talk about the 70s, right? Basically 75 through 81, and what a condensed, concentrated level of play there was, a high-end play, right? But how many players from that decade were kind of penalized by the fact that they had such short careers? Because we certainly put a lot of credence in longevity in the case of Tom Yore and others, right? And also, 81, really, and you kind of talked about this earlier. I think we were talking about Furry, and you mentioned it, Adam. But after the crash of TS, after the big money, after this was a career for them, how could they really adapt to playing for that much less money? If you guys did, Speer continued on, a few others, but how could you really, right? After you're doing this, you have this in your sights of making a career and good money, and then suddenly it's gone. How can you go out and play for $3,000 when you had been playing for 25?
Right.
So how many players were penalized by short careers during that era? These are all the things, folks, that we had to deal with when putting this list together.
And so much more.
Yeah. Yes.
It's a rough one. Bias is a thing.
Another interesting thing is that with the four of us, and I guess this isn't a big thing, but we all had number 1 and number 2 exactly the same. And I think most people probably would. Now, a lot of people might have thought maybe Straightemann sneaks over Lafredo. And if Tony had tossed in another 2 to 3 to 5 doubles championships at the Worlds, maybe he would have. Maybe he would have snuck past Lafredo potentially. But we all had Collignon 1, all had Lafredo 2. And I think most people probably would.
I had some arguments in private messages about Lafredo being above Fred because Lafredo is Fred's basically mentor, and maybe Fred never picks up the American game. I don't buy into that, though. I think that Fred is maybe takes a little bit longer, but Fred has to win those singles and mixed doubles without Todd, and Fred is going to get there one way or the other. So I don't buy into that. I think Fred is deservingly. I mean, how could he's his weakest table, and all he did was wipe the floor with Americans for 20 years.
Something?
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's absolutely.
But also when you talk about the wins of Pappas or Spreaderman, or even Ryan Moore in singles, you always say, and he beat Frederick Colinyon in the final, and it's like, wow, he also, that adds to theirs. It's like strength of schedule in college football or whatever. This adds to their, legendary status, to their legacy as well. So
in our defense, though, Jim, in our defense, that argument also was deep in our discussions the other way. So in our discussions, and I'm not sure if I was on an island on this by myself, but I feel strongly that the weakest era of modern American foosball at the top level has been from 2010 to now. And the reason why is because Fred basically retires and Billy essentially drops off the face of the earth. And those are when you get two super mega talents like that are in their playing prime. I mean, Fred triples and he quits. Billy could still be winning all he wanted if he wasn't focused on other stuff, frankly. So when you get, imagine, we saw it in basketball. I'll use this analogy again. Michael Jordan wins 3 championships, and then he goes to play baseball, and then it's like a complete parody, and then he comes back and wins 3 more. So we had to leverage that and calibrate that. Go ahead. You want to say something?
For sure. And I will argue that the 1990s were actually one of the weakest times in the NBA when he won his 6 world championships. It was not the 80s. It was not the Sixers and the Lakers and the Celtics.
Okay, Laker bias.
No, I think that's just a fact. But 2010, so look at it this way. And we talked about this, I think, off the air a week or 2 ago. But I will match up the next, the problem is that you've got Ryan Moore and Tony Spreaderman. Now, if Fred had to continue, because he quit for basically the money wasn't there, Pappas for his own particular reasons, whether it was involved with something else, poker, et cetera, or just disenchantment with the American tour or lack of money. But you have these 2 guys, these true transcendent players in Tony Spreaderman and Ryan Moore, right? Sitting up there at the top. Well, let's look at the next 10 players on tour. And I actually think they compare pretty favorably to that group of the 90s when there really was no great player. There was Terry Moore, there was Todd Lafredo, there was Tommy Atkinson, all of whom obviously made it.
Robbie was pretty damn good. Dave was pretty damn good.
But they are not in the class. They're not these transcendent, all-time great, setting the bar higher and higher players like Tony Spreaderman and Ryan Moore. So it's almost like you got to throw them out of the mix because these 2 guys were so good for various reasons, second generation, dedication to the sport, all these various reasons. They were the 2 guys just head and shoulders above anyone else. Then that next 10, though, is comparable to what we had in the 90s. I don't think, and while I won't say that it's as strong as the 90s, the 2010s, I don't think it's as weak as you make it out to be. I think it's still the one thing that we don't see in the 2010s until maybe the last few years is the number of players, the number of rounds that these guys had to play, right? Yeah. In the 90s, they had to get in. Once they got to the round of 16, although you look at a world championship these days, round of 16, pretty strong. But they didn't have to play as many rounds and maybe as many rounds against comparable players as they did in the 90s and certainly not in the 70s. But I don't think it's as weak. I would say the weakest decade ever, and maybe I'm going to catch some mail for this one.
You will.
I think the weakest decade ever is the 1980s, just like music.
Probably. That's probably true.
Just like the music.
What do you mean, just like music?
Yeah, just like the music.
Did you ever listen to
you
U2?
smoking crack? The 80s was also music.
I gotta add something here. We touched upon it, but I mean, this is a really big deal. Is generational rose tinted glasses bias?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna just throw that out there. And the other thing I'm gonna throw out there is, at what point, if you put Babe Ruth in a time machine and jump him up to the 30s, 40s, 50s. When does the accumulated skill level and ability and of course talent start dumping on the previous generations?
Oh, that's true.
I mean, it's huge. What's his face? What's the guy? Oh my gosh, I cannot believe the pitcher
Barry
for the Dodgers. No, the
Fernando Valenzuela.
No, 60s.
Oh, you're talking about Sandy Koufax.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, yes. Sandy Koufax would crush Babe Ruth left, right, center. No question about it.
He would crush guys these days as well.
Right. I know. But I mean, but that being said, that's my point. When we talk
but so look, you'll never get an argument from me that the physical skill of the modern player isn't of the average modern player, by the way. Like Tommy Brewer is like an amateur, maybe just turned expert out of Florida, and his skill level is pretty damn incredible, comparably to where we started in the 90s. It's skill is how, but here's the difference. The difference is this. there are a lot less players. There were 200
Right.
paper pros and masters in the 90s easily. There were 200. And guess what you had to do? You had to prepare for a lot more players. I mean, they would see the masters back then knew who everyone was playing with. They'd see the bracket out a month in advance, and they'd prepare for these 16 other teams. You don't got to do that now. Tony's got to prepare for Ryan and maybe Billy, and probably not Billy. That's it. You prepare for those two. Maybe Tommy Orr, but Tommy Orr's not even playing anymore. So it's just different in that regard.
Right. No, I agree. No, because my dad was telling me, like, the Worlds, when they set up for Worlds in 75 or whatever, they had 400 or 500 tables.
Yeah.
Wow.
Tables. I mean, it's unbelievable. And it just,
guys,
that's a different thing.
Yeah, we're right up against it. Let's continue this next week.
Yeah.
As
Yes,
well. There's
sure.
so
We
much
got
more
to.
to talk about
We got
as
to.
well.
We're going to find a hook for the fans, too, to keep this thing going, because the conversation is
Ask us anything.
live and direct.
Ask us anything about the top 50.
I think we should do Ask Us Anything, and maybe we could have an informal poll, and we could discuss that and talk about through that lens what it's like going through that process.
Yeah, feel free
because
to
there's already
reach
people
out.
with opinions.
Yeah, feel free to reach out, insidefoos.com or foosballradio.com. It's info@foosballradio.com if you want to email
We'll
us
start
as
a
well.
post.
Or even
start
at
a post
Inside
with
Foos
anything.
TV,
Yeah.
Inside Foos TV, Facebook as well. Any of those, and let's continue this conversation. It's a fascinating one as we head into the new year, 2022.
Well, I have to say, after all this, the 50 you've gone through, plus the honorable mentions, I'm astounded at how well you guys did. And wow, let's do this again next year. What do you think?
Oh,
I might need therapy. I might need therapy.
that.
We need a support group first. So
I'd say, every few years. I think a minimum of 3 years. I think probably in between, maybe even 5, as we let players develop, like Sullivan and some of the others, Midori,
Sure.
etc. So
Blake,
a great job by both of you. I am such fans of Mark Torres and Adam Gilson, and you as well, Tom Robinson, that it's just a pleasure to work with you guys, to be a part of not only this particular task that we took on, but also this show in general. So thanks,
Cool.
guys.
Thanks, Jim. And
Awesome.
group hug.
Group hug.
No, thanks to our listeners for tuning in.
Fist bump.
Absolutely. And again, cheers to 2022. It's a brand new
It's a
year.
grinding. It's a grinding dumber hug for me.
So, Adam, any closing thoughts? Any parting shots?
No, I'm just excited to see where foosball goes this year.
Yes.
I think maybe January might be rough for one reason or another, but I got a good feeling. I got goosebumps still, so I'm excited.
Cool. And Mark?
I love you guys. Grinding dumber hugs incoming right now.
Cool. Well, maybe we'll see you in Buffalo next weekend, but thanks for tuning into FoosTalk Live. We'll be back again very soon. FoosTalk Live is a product of Inside Foos, all rights reserved. Brought to you in part by InsideFoos.com, Protectoflex, Rodlock, 518 Prince, Foosballers the Movie, the USTSO, and Foosball Clubs USA. Tune in again next week for another episode of FoosTalk Live. In the meantime,
We'll see you foozin'.